Hey nerds, Outlaws of Thunder Junction spoiler season is finally over, and holy cow did we get a bunch of new cards. So for this week's video, I wanted to share my top 5 Pauper EDH commanders from the set. If you don't know what Pauper EDH is, you can check out my other videos shown on screen here somewhere and linked in the description below where I kind of go over the format. As always, I'm going to give my thoughts on the key strategies for the commanders and some key cards you'd want to include. One final note, these aren't listed in any particular order, so just make sure to watch until the end for some honorable mentions. Without further ado, let's get into it. Let's kick things off with none other than Vial Smasher Gleeful Grenadier. Much like his original card, Vial Smasher the Fierce, he wants to deal damage to your opponents. But instead of casting big spells to deal big damage, we want to cast and reanimate Outlaws to slowly chip away at our opponents. And because Outlaws span 5 creature types, we have over 200 Rakdos baddies to join up with. There are some notable powerhouses like Boarding Party, Thorn of the Black Rose, and Crimson Fleet Commodore. Now, Rakdos isn't known for its ability to blink creatures, especially in PDH, but it's very good at reanimating their creatures. So I'd build Vial Smasher as a Rakdos Aristocrats deck where we sack creatures for value and use cheap instant speed waste to bring them back. I'm thinking of cards like Feign Death, Not Dead After All, and Undying Malice to kick things off. You could also include Ashnod's Intervention and Supernatural Stamina for more 1-mana options, but the 3 I just mentioned also buff the creature when they return them. As for dedicated reanimation spells, we get Dread Return and Unearth. And finally, I'd include all the sacrifice draw effects like Village Rites, Deadly Dispute, and Corrupted Conviction. Next up is Eartha Joe, Frontier Mentor. This commander is a Rings of Brighthearth for abilities that specifically target creatures or opponents on a stick. Now, I had to do a double take when I first saw this commander. We don't normally get this effect at Uncommon and in the command zone. I made the mistake of when I first read her, thinking she only copied creature abilities, but that actually isn't the case. This means we can double up on Basilica Skullbomb and Furnace Skullbomb triggers to draw cards. See, I would likely build her as an artifact deck because of the recursion artifacts provide. There is also a cute interaction I saw with Viridian Longbow. Because Equip is an activated ability, she allows you to pick new targets, so you can pay 3 mana and move the bow to an untapped creature. Then with the copy on the stack, tap the creature to deal 1 damage to any target, and then you copy that so it deals 2 damage. Then you move the bow to the new creature and do this again. Basically, this equipment becomes 3 mana to deal 4 damage to target creature or player. And because the creature is dealing the damage, if they have Lifelink, Death Touch, or Infect, you get those benefits too. If you're looking to build Dimir Control, Lazav Familiar Stranger should be your next commander. His ability only triggers once each turn when we commit a crime, but it doesn't matter whose turn it is, so we can use instants like Thought Scour, Dream Twist, and Dampen Thought to mill opponents and fuel Lazav's ability. You could also add a small Voltron package of Whispersil Cloak, Haunted Cloak, and Vorak Battlehorns. You could also mill yourself instead, and just use removal to trigger Lazav's ability. If you want to try something unique, try building Lazav Eldrazi. You have to play massive threats like Ulamog's Crusher, Eldrazi Devastator, and Hand of Emrakul, which Lazav can also turn into, and you play the Eldrazi Processors, Oracle of Dust, Murkstrider, and Mindraker to get additional value from the cards Lazav exiles. There are 29 Eldrazi in Dimir colors, which is more than enough to build a dedicated deck. Next on the list is Crom Violent Cacophony. Izzet Spells is a tried and true strategy, and if you're looking for a new spell commander, Crom might be the zombie horror you're looking for. Casting 2 spells on each turn should be easy enough to do with cheap cantrips such as Opt, Consider, and Brainstorm. You could easily build Crom as a traditional Storm commander with rituals and then cards like Grape Shot, Galvanic Relay, and Temporal Fissure. However, I'm more interested in building him as a Voltron commander with combat tricks, giving him double strike with cards like Team of Battle Rage, Psychotic Fury, and Uncaged Fury, or Trample with Fists of Flames, Crash Through, and Rile. And with blue, we have a wide range of counterspells to help make sure Crom sticks around to win the game. And to round out the top 5, we have a new mono white commander, Bounding Felidar. This is also the only non-legendary creature in my top 5. I think part of that is Wizards has started to print more uncommon legend in the last several years, but that discussion could be an entire video on its own. Instead, I want to talk about the power of white weenies, especially in PDH. There is something about casting Thraben Inspector, Novice Inspector, and Squadron Hawk that just makes me giddy. The other mono-white archetype I love is Soul Sisters, featuring Soul Warden, Soul's Attendant, and Suture Priest. So when I see a commander like Bounding Felidar that supports both at the same time, you know we have to build it. I'd build Bounding Feldar as a go-wide deck to maximize the amount of +1/+1 counters and life gain. Of course, there are token staples such as Raise the Alarm, Charge of Mites, and Battle Screech. But how about creatures that care when they become tapped or untapped? Cards like Stony Brook Schoolmaster, which makes a merfolk whenever it's tapped, Semite Herbalist, which gives us some life and scry, or Orozco Sunguard, which gains us life. And if we generate enough merfolk with Stony Brook, you might want to include Judge of Currents. Now the final piece of the puzzle is Village Bellringer. This card, in conjunction with some blink spells, will give our board pseudo-vigilance. And finally, I wanted to talk about some honorable mentions. These are cards I think that are interesting and probably powerful, but I didn't quite know what to do with them, or their idea was so straightforward there wasn't much to say. First up is Cactus Folk Sure Shot. It took me way too many takes to get that down. This reminds me a bit of Kendra Charioteer, but instead of giving all creatures trample, it cares about creatures with power 4 or greater, and it also gives haste. Next up is Servant of the Stinger. This is a demonic tutor that has to sacrifice itself, and you need to commit a crime, and it has to deal combat damage. No doubt a tutor from the command zone is powerful, but it's not my cup of tea. Next up is Wrangler of the Damned. If you want to build blue-white control in PDH, Wrangler seems like a solid option. My biggest issue is it seems pretty slow, especially for 5 mana. Next up is Deep Muck Desperado. If you want to build mill, this is your crab. Now there are plenty of blue mill spells that target opponents, which essentially lets you double up on mill triggers. And then finally we have Forsaken Miner. This zombie barely missed the top 5. It's a 1 mana commander that can recur itself for a single black, and it's going to combo with something in the format, especially when we have access to Ashnod's Altar and Mana Filter cards in the format. The hardest part is finding a solid payoff in mono black and an engine to commit infinite crimes. Once we find that though, I'm sure this deck will be an absolute menace. Let me know in the comments what PDH commander you're looking forward to building, and make sure to check out my original PDH video linked in the video description below and shown on screen here. Make sure you're subscribed and like the video for more PDH content. Alrighty everyone, good luck at pre-release, and I'll see you next time.